God. By C. Kegan Paul. Question. Can you tell me, child, who made you? Answer. The great God, who made heaven and earth. Question. And what doth God do for you? Answer. He keeps me from harm by night and by day, and is always doing me good. Question. And what must you do for this great God, who is so good to you? Answer. I must learn to know him first, and then I must do everything to please him. Such is the opening of a catechism for children, drawn up by Dr. Watts, a preacher of the sect of Independence in England, who died nearly 150 years ago, and it would not be easy to better the wording of the statement, which forms the basis of all Christian belief. His words are chosen here because, like so many other men in his time and since, he held much Catholic doctrine without knowing it, but had no man to guide him in the building he should raise on that simple foundation. There are those among Catholics who will be glad to hear how close to their own belief came men, endeavoring without our advantages, but in all sincerity and good faith, to know the mysteries of God. It was, for instance, that same Dr. Watts, who, meditating on the crucifixion, wrote the remarkable hymn which follows. When I survey the wondrous cross, on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast, save in the death of Christ my God. All the vain things which charm me most, I sacrifice them to his blood. See from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did e'er such love and sorrow meet? Or thorns compose so rich a crown? His dying crimson, like a robe, spreads o'er his body on the tree. Then I am dead to all the globe, and all the globe is dead to me. Were the whole realm of nature mine, that were a present far too small. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. The feeling excited in every religious Protestant when he sings that hymn, the devout thoughts of every Catholic who kneels before a crucifix, could have no existence unless founded on the simple words, I believe in God, or, as a child might put it, God, who made the sky above us, and the earth on which we walk, made me, he holds me up by day, lest I dash my foot against a stone, he keeps me by night, when dread darkness is around us. From him comes all the good I have and enjoy. Whoever holds that faith with any true grasp of mind believes this also, from him come not the terror by night, nor the arrow that fleeth by day, it is not he who brings evil on us when evil comes. But we may go much further than this, those words lie at the root of every faith, however maimed or imperfect, by which men have walked in times past. The greater souls among the Jews had more than imperfect faith, as Jesus Christ said of Abraham, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and many of David's words can now only be understood by the light thrown on them by Jesus, but every Jewish child had belief in God stamped on him from his earliest days. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one God, was the first religious teaching his ear heard, or his lips were taught to frame. If we look carelessly or superficially at the religions of Greece and Rome, we are struck by the fact that they seem to have had a multitude of gods rather than the one great God, who made heaven and earth, but underlying these fancies, and ringing more truly in the deep of their souls, was the acknowledgement of one almighty power, sustaining all that is. When St. Paul would preach his master at Athens, he did not think it necessary to destroy the falsehoods he saw around him, save by proclaiming the truth which made them incredible. He saw an altar with the inscription, to the unknown God, and, recognizing thereby that they admitted his existence, declared to them the God whom they ignorantly worshipped. If we go still further afield, amid the base superstitions of Asia is found faith in one supreme Lord, not wholly stifled in the welter of dying religions and civilizations, while even in the savage, fallen from his high estate, emerging with difficulty from a condition little above the brute, the same idea has never been wholly crushed. One of our great English poets bids us mark the poor Indian, whose untutored mind sees God in clouds and hears him in the wind. It is not then too much to say that universal human tradition testifies to a belief in God, nor will it be denied that, as a rule, the greatest men in each nation have been those who held it most firmly. Now such a belief can have come into the mind of man only in two ways, if in one of them the belief may be, but it is not necessarily, false, if in the other, it must be true. 1. That the mind of man has itself imagined the being whom we call God. 2. That he, man's creator, has revealed himself to the mind of man. Which of these alternatives is the more likely to be true? That there is a great likeness between God and man is universally admitted. Faith in God accounts for this by the second alternative, and accepts as a truth that the Creator, in his wisdom, made man like himself, that whatever unlikeness now exists is a perverse departure by the creature from the original idea. The first alternative would declare man the creator of the idea of God, who would then be made in man's image. But he is not so made. Theodore Parker, the well-known Unitarian preacher in America, appears to have lent to this view, and said that man's conception of God must partake of man's imperfections, that man could, of necessity, only imagine God as a magnified man. Just as, he says, if a stag, in a primeval forest, were to frame to himself an idea of God, he could only do so under the form of a very great stag. That is probably true, but it is precisely what man has not done. He must indeed, under the conditions of human language, speak of God's right hand, his compassionate heart, his wrath, and even his repentance, but he knows that he speaks as a man, and when he attempts to define what God really is, he casts aside this language of accommodation, and declares that God is a spirit, who has no body, nor parts, nor passions, who neither slumbers nor sleeps, is not affected by our weaknesses, cannot be comprehended, nor grasped by our puny minds. Whatever of greatness or goodness, of love or pity, of justice absolute and unswerving, of mercy and truth, we can conceive, that, and far more than that, is God. It follows then that the knowledge of God is a revelation from him, since the God is not that which man would imagine for himself, and there is no third way of knowledge. This revelation is confirmed to our minds, and, if lost, may be in great measure recovered, by the teaching of nature. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, his eternal power also and divinity. The universe is not made by man, nor self-made, and must therefore be made by a being outside it, and this being we call God. But, it may be said, the assertion of, and belief in, God are not universal. There have been in all nations men who believed not in him. The psalmist recognized the fact among the Jews, and considered the unbeliever a fool. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God, and also he asserted that misbelief led to misdeeds as cause and effect. They, the fools, are corrupt and become abominable in their ways. There is none that doth good, no, not one. Much of Greek and Roman literature is full of what we might now call atheism, if not a denial of God, at all events, so complete an ignoring of him as to be tantamount to a denial. St. Paul's view of the matter was that no one in that heathen world of Greece and Rome had denied God, unless he liked or wished to do so, that in fact there is no such thing as an intellectual atheist. He underlines, so to speak, the psalmist's words, hath said in his heart, and asserts that the affections and the will are in fault when a man denies, or ignores, or disregards God. he attributes the corruption of the world in his days to the fact that men are like not to have God in their knowledge, wherefore God delivered them up to a reprobate sense, to do those things which are not convenient. Such is probably the secret condition of many men now who deny or set aside God the Creator. There are, however, very few who actually deny. A direct proof that God exists, in the same way that there is proof that 2 and 2 make 4, is no doubt very difficult to find, but to prove that God does not exist would be far harder. The impossibility of proving a negative has passed into a proverb. The denials of this age are in fact rather the social denials, that man is his brother's keeper, that God has made of one blood all nations and classes on earth, as the poet has told us. This age shows, to my thinking, far more infidels to Adam than, directly, by profession, simple infidels to God. And there has been probably only one man of considerable ability within the present century who has deliberately committed himself to the declaration, "There is no God." The poet Shelley wrote under his signature in an album the word atheist in Greek. Of this, however, it may be remarked that he was scarce more than a boy, and that it was a mere brag, further, that God's nature had never been explained to him. He had framed to himself the image of a being wholly detestable, and repudiated that, not the being who kept him from harm by night and by day, and was always doing him good. There is probably no man now living, whose opinion is worth having on any other matters, who would write deliberately atheist under his signature. But there are many atheists, in a secondary sense, men who know not God, who do not see him, who practically and deliberately leave him out of their lives. Some of these are not fools as we count folly, nor wicked, as we count wickedness. One of these, a man of high scientific attainments, said some years ago, on a calm and beautiful day, when he had been speaking of the wonders of nature, of his own happy life, and the abundant blessings which surrounded him, "I never go to bed at night, without wishing to say thank you to some one, if I could but see the one to whom I should say it." Surely to such a man a St. Paul, or one sent by God in the spirit of St. Paul, would say, "Whom you ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you." Believers will remember the Apostle's further statement that those who seek God may haply feel after him and find him, although he be not far from every one of us. But the speaker quoted above was, as he said, an happy man. What if he had been otherwise, and the word which would rise to his lips if he could find one to whom he should speak, were not "Thank you, but be merciful to me a sinner," or "Who shall deliver me from the body of this death," or "Where is the stream, the happy stream, to rid me of distempering heat, to lave me in its running strength, and give my heart a moderate beat"? What if the day should ever come when he should have ceased to feel himself raised above the common herd by genius or force of character, if that arrogance in intellect, consistent though it was with a tender heart, should give way, and he should feel himself to be simply one of that mass of weak human creatures, of whom the great majority have said "I believe in God"? Listen to that poet, who, perhaps more than any other, breathes the half-skeptical, half-wistful spirit of the 19th century. There is no God, the wicked saith. And truly it's a blessing. For what he might have done with us, it's better only guessing. There is no God, a youngster thinks. Or, really, if there may be, he surely didn't mean a man, always to be a baby. There is no God, or if there is, the tradesman thinks, 'twere funny, if he should take it ill in me, to make a little money. Whether there be, the rich man says, it matters very little. For I and mine, thank somebody, are not in want of victual. Some others also, to themselves, who scarce so much as doubt it, think there is none when they are well, and do not think about it. But country folks, who live beneath the shadow of the steeple, the parson and the parson's wife, and mostly married people, youths green and happy in first love, so thankful for illusion, and men caught out in what the world calls guilt, in first confusion, and almost everyone, when age, disease, or sorrow strikes him, inclines to think there is a God, or something very like him. Now, if we take that out of the light and mocking verse which does not conceal an undertone of anguish, and translate it into simple prose, we find the same declaration, that now too the deniers of God are the wicked and the foolish, those engrossed in the cares and riches of the world, the idle and thoughtless, that those who confess him are orderly, quiet, sober livers, who care for the poor, who are often weary, sick, and heavy-laden, and who seek rest for their souls. The question is one as important for the man as for the child. Can you tell me, man, who made you? You, a man, in the excellence of your strength, you, woman, in the pride of your youth. If we cannot answer this with real conviction, if we are inclined to separate ourselves from that vast company of the living and the dead who have replied, the great God who made heaven and earth, we should, in the name of common sense, be able to give a reason for the negation that is in us, and must, in order to this, ask ourselves the further questions: does any pride of intellect, or any sin of the flesh come between us and our Creator, always ready to answer us when we cry, who will show us any good? Perhaps we have not to accuse ourselves of any active unbelief, and are yet conscious that faith has grown less vivid than when we were children. We have withdrawn ourselves from God, and fancied he has hidden himself from us. Yet if we will deal honestly with ourselves, the depths of our inmost nature have cried to us from time to time, and when most we seem to have lost him. Oh, somewhere, God unknown, exist and be. I am dying, I am all alone. I must have thee. And perhaps these poor words may aid us to recover the attitude of mind which was ours in tender years, when we knew that God was very near, may help us to say with a more abiding sense of the reality of words, Credo in unum Deum, and to answer with absolute conviction the first two questions in our Catholic Catechism. Question: who made you? Answer: God made me. Question: why did God make you? Answer: God made me to know him, love him, and serve him in this world, and to be happy with him forever in